Constructing a group frequency distribution takes a long time. We've already spent 15 minutes getting our distribution up to this point. So we're using Excel demonstration, store A frequency distribution to continue. So we're going to continue on with the distribution, and we're actually going to create our histogram. So what we did last time was we took our store A price. We came up with the number of classes that we're interested in. We said 5. The range is $9. Our class width with the correct rounding is $1.81. We then created the lower class limit, the upper class limit, the lower class boundary, the upper class boundary, and the frequency. Then we took the data analysis tools. So we used Excel's data analysis tool pack, and we used the histogram function. We're not using the histogram function to create the histogram, but we're using it to tally all of our data into the appropriate classes. So we picked OK. The input range is our raw data, so notice it's highlighted over here in column A. The bin range is our upper class boundaries, so notice there are these boundaries sitting in column J. Then we picked an output range to output the information to, and so we just located it. We just picked a spot on our worksheet, and the spot that we picked was column H, row 10, and we picked OK. When we did this, the Excel generated this little table that's down here. Then I took those frequencies and I copied them and put them up in our table so everything could stay nice and organized. So now we really don't need this this little table that Excel generated for us. So we could delete it if we wanted. So let's get rid of this. Didn't get rid of the formatting, so let me just format, get rid of that. Just going to paste our original formatting on here so it doesn't, so maybe it can get rid of all those bold lines and stuff. Okay, so now what happens, if I can find our location and not scroll all over the place, is the last things that I want to put in this frequency distribution is I want to put the cumulative frequency in and the midpoints. Once I do those two things, then I'm going to be able to create the histogram, the frequency polygon, and the ogive. So that's my intention, is to put our cumulative frequency here. Space it out so I can see the whole word. So cumulative frequency, and then we'll put the midpoints. So right next to it, I'm going to put midpoints. Maybe I'll just say midpoint. Make it a little bit bigger. So now what happens is for the cumulative frequency, I want to take this and I want to represent the data accumulative up to each one of the upper boundaries. So I'm going to start with the very first one, and I'm going to say up to the boundary of 3.795, cumulatively I have 10. Then up to the upper class boundary of 5.605, I have 10 plus the 11 from this class. Then for the next one, I have 21 plus the frequency for this class representing its upper class boundary. So I can take this and I'm going to copy this down. And at the end, cumulatively, I'm going to end up with 30. I have 30 pieces of data. When I accumulate all my data, I should end up with 30. I can also come over here and I can do a check and balance. Let's do a sum. Make sure that Excel came up with all 30 pieces of our data when it tallied it all into our frequency distribution. So the last thing that I want to do is I want to do the midpoint. So the midpoint is going to take the class boundaries and it's going to find the midpoint of them. So I'm going to say equal lower class boundary plus upper class boundary. Let me put parentheses around that because order of operations, I want to add those two together. And then I want to divide by 2. And that's going to be my midpoint of that class. So I'm going to copy those down. Then I'm going to format this cell for the midpoints. I'm going to make sure that it has 2 decimal places. So I'm going to say number 2 decimal places. So that's the last thing that I needed for my distribution to get ready to create the histogram. Now I'm ready to create the histogram. It's a modified bar chart. So continue on into the next video and we'll talk about creating a histogram from this frequency distribution.